Hello everybody, my name is Terminus, with the red backlight this time. It's been a long time since we had that, but we're gonna go back into it with Monster, because I'm excited what's gonna happen next. We are going towards the home stretch. We are at episode 62, which is very exciting. And yeah, we'll be seeing how this thing is going on. I mean, last time we had all of the stuff happening with Ava and Martin and Tenma, and we'll see. Tenma is, I think, ready to go in for another assassination attempt on Johan, and Ava wants to do the same, in somewhat of a sense, trying to save Tenma as well. And I don't know where Nina is. I think last thing we knew of her was her following the trail of her past. So yeah, let's I could be misremembering something about Nina, but anyway. We got the nice German flag over here, we got everything up and ready to go, so let's start this in 3, 2, 1, bam! The Jahreszeit Hotel in Frankfurt. It's like the Seasons Hotel, right? Jahreszeit means season. Chapek. Oh, the baby. So that's Chapek. Okay. I thought maybe it was the other dude, but it's him. I mean, they should know Tenma, so Tenma should be careful. Holy shit. Once again. They are onto him, holy fuck. I mean, he's a wanted man still, so no wonder, but... Holy shit, what just happened? Tenma, don't tell me you're gonna be... Oh, shit. I didn't expect that. Kind of ironic for the doctor to be possibly landing in the hospital. Yeah, we're at end stage Tenma. This is one-to-one his look. Pleasant dinner table. Oh yeah. Somebody picked him up though, he's not in the hospital. Wait, I know you. Aren't you the little girl who... No, I thought so. She looked like the little girl who was with the... Like with the instructor who taught him how to shoot. A little bit. Oh, he knows a dentist. I mean, obviously dentists study the exact or mostly the same medicine.
トルコ人街。
いや、
Well, not exactly.
だったというべきかな。再開発とやらでそこら中取り壊しだ。ここにいたトルコ人たちもほとんどが他のところに移っていった。以前極右の連中に焼き討ちをかけられた時は力を合わせて。
Ooh, it's this neighborhood.
バヒールってカフェももうないのですか？
もうとっくにない。あんた知ってんのかい、この辺り？
ええ、ちょっと。
ところで
ちょっと。
起き上がれるんならあっちで食事するかい？みんなで食った方がうまいだろう。
I guess that means like I knew it in
ベト
passing.
ナム料理だ。ムインが作ったフォーガートチャーゾートム。
Japanese
ムインの
even?
ベトナ
What?
ム料理は格別だ。遠慮
Oh
な
no,
く
no, no, Japanese. It's not Japanese. But it's very, very close, to be fair.
美味しい。
俺は豚肉が大好物なんだが、トルコ人は豚はご法度だからな。
チェコ料理はあまりいただけないな。
あれはミランの料理が下手だからだよ。
悪かったな。
みんな変わる変わる故郷の料理を作ってるのよ。
毎日いろんな
Hey, that must be great. The variety.
贅沢だろ。ドクターテーマは日本人でしょ。日本の料理ってどんなの？
日本の料理か。
そうだ。今度作っておくれよ。
楽しみだわ。
そうだな。カツ丼は豚を使うし、寿司、生魚は食べられない人もいるか。親子丼なんかどうかな。
親子丼？
ええ、ライスの上にタレと卵を絡めた鶏肉を乗せて。
Hmm.
なんでそれが親子丼なんだ？
鶏が親で卵が子供。
それで親子丼？
Parentage, holy shit. That's kind of morbid, I'm not gonna lie.
日本の料理は。
鶏と卵で親子とはね。
あ、どうしたのテーマ？
いや、
Hmm.
食事が口に合わなかった？
いや、美味しいですよ。こんな美味しい料理、こんな楽しい食事は本当に久しぶりです。
Yeah, I thought so. Like, he really misses an aspect of this, right? Because he's been on the run for so long. It must be really hard for him. Like, the isolation alone.
テーマ。
おやすみ。
Even though he had Dieter and Nina here and there, but he's always been on the run. He's always been like, stay away from me.
歩けるようになるまでもたもたしている時間はないのに。
So he's been observing this guy.
ペトル、チャペック、銃。
He's an agent of some kind.
ペトル・チャペックの行動を追ったレポート。
変だと思っただろう。あんなに手際よく警察が集まったのはあんたを捕まえるためじゃない。もともと警察は俺のために張り込んでたのさ。俺はペトル・チャペックを殺す。
Hmm. Yeah. Chabek be scheming.
おかしいな。昔はすごく飛ぶのを作れたのにな。
ミランは紙飛行機作るの上手だよ。スーって向こうの屋根まで飛んでいくんだから。
そうか。
ミランはいつもこう言うんだ。いつも約束するんだよ。
今にあの屋根なんかよりずっと遠くへ行くぞ。トルコに行って、ベトナムに行ってチェコにも行く。みんなの故郷をみんなで見て回ろう。
まあ、
I wonder if that's actually the truth, because he could be able to go there in like in the process of
やっぱりダメだ。
his work.
俺はペトル・チャペックを殺す。
なぜミランさん、あなたがそんなことを。
その男はペトル・チャペックという男は悪魔だ。
Hmm.
1989年チェコスロバキア共産党支配
Ooh. Okay. War criminal.
ここフランクフルトに住み着いたチャペックはドイツ語の教師として授業を始めた。
The weasels they always get through.
ところがある頃から子供たちに変化が起きた。彼の授業に出ていた子供が次々に自殺した。
Ooh, okay.
そして極端な暴力性を見せ始め、ついにある
One of the two
同士の殺し合いと言ってもいいような集団暴行事件が起きた。
gangs in a sense.
死亡者と言われた少年が収容された施設に面会に行ったよ。彼はぽつりとこんなことを言った。早く朗読会に戻りたい。
朗読会。
その少年はその夜施設内で自殺した。俺の息子だ。チャペックはそんな騒ぎの中、消えるようにこの町を出てった。次に町に現れた時、奴は別人のようだった。フランクフルトの闇の組織を従え、極右グループと手を結んでいた。そしてこの町のトルコ人やその他の外国人たちの排斥を始めた。あの男がこの町で何をしようとしているのかはわからない。ただ彼の暴力が頂点に達したのが1990年、トルコ人が焼き討ち。
When Tenma was present.
あんたもその事件は知ってるんじゃないか？
ああ、ニュースで。
A white lie.
人間は自警団を作り連中に対抗しようとした。ところが自警団のリーダー格の5人の人間がわずか3ヶ月の間に次々とおかしな
その死んだ5人というのは
スレイマンの息子トゥンの父親、ムインの夫、
He took them
ムス
in.
タファの息子、そしてシュメルの父親。死んだんじゃない。
They were murdered.
殺された。
Yeah.
ペトル・チャペックに。あんたがなぜチャペックを見張っていたのかは知らない。ただこれだけは言っておく。チャペックを殺すのは俺だ。
I mean, to be fair, Tenma has another goal, another mark. Oh, let me actually. I just noticed something. Maybe I can.
無理だよ。
いや、頑張って。
頑張ったって無理なものは
There
無
we
理な
go.
のさ。僕ら分かってるんだ。トルコやベトナムにみんなで旅行なんてできるわけないってこと。旅行なんか行かなくても、このままミランやトゥンと一緒に暮らせれば。
Why can't they all travel together? Like, what do you mean?
今度こそ飛ぶぞ。
それ。
Actually, I need to go back there. Let me we're gonna resync that, right? Like.
待ってろ。今度のはなかなか良さそうだ。
無理だよ。
いや、頑張って。
頑張ったって無理なものは無理なのさ。僕ら分かってるんだ。トルコやベトナムにみんなで旅行なんてできるわけないってこと。旅行なんか行かなくても、このままミランやトゥンと一緒に暮らせればいいんだ。
Can't all travel together. I'm trying to think about like what
今度こそ飛ぶぞ。
that would entail at this point in time, right? We are late 1990s.
やった、飛んでる。すごいすごい。
ミランさんみたいに屋根の向こうまでは無理かな。でもなんとか飛んでいる。諦めなくてよかったろ。
It's a life lesson too, right? Oh, I love the music. Oh, and it's almost like he's chanting it to himself, right? Like he's saying it to the kids, but he's also saying it to himself. You can't give up.
俺の銃はどこだ？引き出しの中にあった俺の銃はどこへやった？チャペックを撃つチャンスが来た。これから行く。銃を返せ。
あなたにそんなことさせられない。 あなたに銃を渡すことはできない。
これはあんたのコートの中にあった銃だ。トレーニングを積んだ使い慣れた銃で本番に挑みたいんでね。俺の銃を出してもらおうか。
あなたには今の家族がある。あなたはそんなことしちゃいけない。
Tenma, that's a problem with Tenma.
の行動を追っていた。今日ほどチャペックを狙えるチャンスはない。
お願いだ。やめてください、ミランさん。
言ったはずだ。邪魔するなと。
今復讐しても死んだ人間は帰らない。それよりもこれからのことを。
あんたにそんなこと言われる筋合いはない。
Yeah, kind of. But he's like, I have nobody. Does he
あ
though?
んたは同じなんだよ。ドクター・テンマ。あんたのことは調べた。あんたの主張したことが本当なら、あんたと俺のやろうとしてることは一緒だ。あいつはあんなやつじゃなかった。俺の知ってるあいつは、あんな悪魔じゃなかった。俺とペトル・チャペックは同郷の幼馴染だ。
Okay.
俺があの男をこの国に呼んだんだ。
He's skilled in it.
何があると思う？言っちゃいけないんだぜ。
Yeah, he's personally involved. He feels responsible, just like Tenma.
さあ、知ってるか？国境の向こうは素晴らしいところらしいよ。一晩中明るい街があるんだ。
本当かよ、ペトル。誰に聞いたんだ？
グレゴールおじさんだ。
あの人アル中だよ。それに国境の向こうにはグレゴールおじさんみたいに人間をダメにするものがあるって。
人間をダメにするものか。見てみたいな、それ。
見たいかよ、そんなもの。それ。風に乗った。
I do wonder what he means by that.
飛んでく飛んでく。
すごい。あれなら本当に国境を越えるぞ。
僕たちの代わりに向こうを見てこい。
俺たちはチェコスロバキアとオーストリア国境近くの町で育った。
Austria, okay. Close to
俺
it.
は職人の子、奴は役人の子。だが、俺
Different,
と奴は
okay.
妙に気があった。1989年、チェコスロバキア共産党体制が崩壊した時、彼の亡命を手助けしたのは俺だ。あの悪魔をこの国に呼んだのは、この俺だ。
But in between, a lot happened, and they, yeah. And you can't be best friends when you're children, and then you grow up and you're so different.
お前がどうしてるか心配してたんだ。
知り合いは何人も引っ張っていかれたがね。俺は無事でここにいる。お前は？
俺か？俺はなんとかかんとか駆け出しの敗者として食いつないでいるよ。
ミランが敗者か。お前手先が器用だったもんな。
お前みたいな世渡りの器用さも身につけたいよ。
確かにソ連が入ってきた後も今の地位にいられるのは世渡りのうまさだったのかもしれない。あのプラハの春の時にはいろいろ楽しんだからな。西側にも行けたしさ。
子供の頃よくそんな話したっけな。向こう側はどんなだろうって。
Hmm.
その答えは出たのか？
出たよ。
で？
何もなかった。向こうもこっちも。この国は間違っている。だが向こうの国も正しいわけじゃない。
なるほど。
Okay, and you think you have an idea?
と言っていたが、実は私の能力を買ってくれた人物がいる。
おう。
And who is
会え
that?
たならもう今の地位なんかどうでもいいと思えるくらい素晴らしい人物。
Is that Bonaparte?
向こうの国にもこちらにも何もないという結論を出した私に全く未知の光を与えてくれた。全く新しいものを生み出す人なんだ。
で、その人は一体何を生み出す人なんだ？
何を？そうだな。恐ろしいものかもしれないよ。
今思えばあの時、あいつの何かが壊れ始めていたのかもしれない。
Stopped it for a second. This is the insane thing, right? Like we are living in times where this is happening, right? People are people in the world, they feel like there's something that's wrong, right? That there's something that's not going the way it's supposed to go. We have a lot of individual crises all across the globe, right? Different tensions between countries, between groups, between people, right? And we're getting to the point where a lot of shit is happening all over the globe. A lot of different opinions clashing too. A lot of polarization going on as well in the political space. You have people that are unsatisfied with the way things are going because they feel financially or personally drained in their own life, right? They are directionless. They don't know what they're supposed to do, but they feel like the place that they are at right now is not the place that they should be at, right? Because it feels bad and they're afraid for the future. There's like a lot of survival elements going on. There's no particular studies I can point out, but in psychological research, especially if we look at events of the past, it is these moments in our personal lives where we are the most vulnerable to messages and manipulation from other people, right? So you do have these groups here that are providing people with a sense of belonging, right? They're providing people with the sense that they have people who understand their suffering, who understand their pain, that there's people who want change, right? Be that change in the way that you want to go forward and embrace new things and technology or like social policies, or be that people who want things to change back to where they were before, right? Or want to change things in a way that they feel their own group, right? Like whatever social group you wanna point out, minorities, majorities, old people, young people, men, women, whatever, right? Like there's a lot of groups that we can categorize ourselves into and count ourselves as part of that, right? Like a general group of people that think similarly or that have like similar like problems in their lives and want to solve them, and they're looking for solutions, and maybe they have found a solution. It's not always the right one, but this is where all of these agendas come in. People come in and swoop in, and they're like, you've been suffering lately. You've kind of not feeling that great, and you feel like you're just being exploited. You feel like things are not going the way you want them to, or things are changing rapidly, and you're afraid of what's about to come. Right? You're afraid of like losing your status, your social status, losing your money, whatever. Right? You feel like you're not in control of your life. Here's how you can get control of your life back. There's this one thing or these 2 or 3 things that are responsible for your issues. It's this. It's super simple. It's a simple solution, right? Like all you need to do is get rid of this thing. And people jump on that because like it's very hard and complicated to think about complex issues and actually realize that there's no perfect solutions in the world. It's much easier in your day-to-day stress, in your like exhaustedness, in your fight for survival, basically, to jump onto a clear and simple solution and be like, oh yes, if I only just believe in that and go that way, it's gonna work out, right? Like we're gonna get rid of all of the stuff that's not okay in our eyes, right? And then everything will be fixed, right? It's just like this person, XYZ at the top, they're like really, really, really evil. I mean, oftentimes that can be the case, but what I found for me personally is that oftentimes the really, really evil people, they're not the people who are in the back, right? Like they're not the people who you generally like. I mean, there's a lot of people in the back who are like pulling strings, making deals, whatever, right? That's the world of politics. That's the world of like, especially international politics or black market deals, whatever. All of this stuff exists. But all of these people up there, they're not shaking hands, right? They're shaking hands to make a trade deal here and there or whatever. But they're all in it for themselves, and that's the thing. And oftentimes I do feel like, especially these days, the people who really pushing this narrative that, oh, there's these specific people that are out for your stuff, and they pay everybody, right, to try to influence you to be against me. Those are oftentimes the people who are projecting their own thing, like their own behavior onto other people, right? So I'm a person who is super rich, right? I don't know, a billionaire or whatever, and I'm like looking at I'm trying to achieve a certain goal, be that like something that is just nefarious because I'm a sadistic shit, or be that a goal that I want to reach because I feel like this is the thing that brings humanity forward. No matter if I'm right or wrong at that, right? I have that goal. And suddenly people are up against me and they bring up valid points. They're like, hey, this is not okay because this and that and whatnot. And you're like, no, I don't want to deal with that. You're paid, right? All of you who criticize me, you're paid. This is not how it works, right? This is not how it works. Now, obviously, there's groups of interest, right? There's like valid evidence that fossil fuel industries, for example, have been, since the 70s or 80s, have been knowing what global warming is all about, and have been like pouring billions of dollars into targeted information campaigns through journalists and all like scientists and whatever to actually make you believe that the new alternate technologies that could be coming in, right, like that they could be just as bad or worse for the environment, or that they don't work properly and they're not viable, right? Everything just to keep up this like structure of power that was like fossil fuels and like coal and traditional energy sources, because they've built up this whole thing, and it would cost a lot of money for them to actually shift to another policy, right? And it's a lot easier to keep structures that are already here, right, and use them to actually influence people's opinion in order to halt the progress of this new. Oftentimes, though, like, it doesn't work out because over time the problems become like are gonna surmount so much, right? They're gonna add up to the point that you can't actually, like, you're on your way out, right? For example, we do know that fossil fuels are limited, right? At some point in time, like, no matter if it's like in 30, 40, 50 years, or maybe even 60 or 70, they're gonna run out, and then we're gonna have nothing, right? So at that point in time, you gotta have the infrastructure to actually be at the point where you need to be. But yeah, there's all of these interest groups, right? And they're vying for power, obviously, because they all have their own worldview. The big problem is that everybody, like a normal person who is just living their life and not being a politician or being like a big industry leader, you're just a worker, or you're a doctor, right? In this case, or you're, I don't know, you're a scientist or whatever. And you're sitting there, or you're just like a mechanic at a car repair shop. And you're sitting there and you're like, holy shit, I don't know if my job's gonna be there in a while, because like they're changing like the combustion engines to electricals. How is that gonna work, right? Like, or hey, I'm working in a like big production plant or whatever, and people are getting laid off, and our bosses tell us that it's not their fault. It's just because of like the policymakers and all of these shifts and whatever, right? Like, you have so much insecurity going on. You have so much like legitimate financial plight going on, right? Either because you're being exploited by big companies, or because like politicians are lobbying against social policies that would support people who are on the lower, like of the lower class, right? People who earn less money than somebody who just, I don't know, like who just inherits millions and can just put them into the stock market and wait for it to grow on its own, right? Who doesn't have to work a day in their lives. There's so much disparity going on that at this point in time, polarization is a big thing. There's people on the one hand who are pushing for more social policies, and then there's a lot of like media attention being put into the fact, like into trying to make people of the middle class or the lower classes fight one another, right? Instead of fighting the inequality that is inherent in our systems. And it's oftentimes an easier solution, because inequality is a really, really big problem that we need to tackle at some point in time, but nobody's come up with a proper viable solution yet. Now, obviously, there's a lot of solutions that are better than what the current status quo is, and they are out there and they exist and they've existed for a long time, but we've continuously found arguments against them because it's very frightening to start changing systems because we don't know what the future's gonna bring, right? And there's always this continuous like capitalist promise of one day you could be a millionaire and then you would be the one who would have to give away more of your money for people who have worked less than you or put less effort into it or are less intelligent. It's so stupid, right? Bringing people up against one another. But this is where they thrive, right? This is where people thrive who are going in there and they have their ideas about purity. They have their ideas about, well, I think only the most intelligent people should be able to procreate. What do you say against that, right? Like, what do you say against that? Obviously, natural evolution exists, but how do you define what the worth of a human being is? You can't just define that, right? Especially in psychology, we know that. Obviously, intelligence is gonna predict a lot of the behavior, like, or the success that we have in life, right? More intelligent people will be more likely to be in more successful jobs. They will earn more money. They will maybe invent more things, right? But it needs people on the lower or middle level to actually keep this society going. And even if you like count in robots and you assume that at some point in the future we're gonna have just a complete 100% automated robot/machine workforce, and people are only gonna do like the higher level jobs, though those can be replaced too technically with AI and whatnot, right? Like that's the crisis we are partially in now with that we have AI and we thought, hey, AI is gonna replace like the low level jobs, and now suddenly they're gonna start replacing, we'll come down on that in just a second, replacing the high level jobs as well because they're so capable or becoming so capable of that. So it's like, I mean, they're not really replacing. I said replacing because they're not really, right? They're just taking away like the mundane tasks that we have to do within those jobs. And yes, like I said, to come back to that, intelligence informs us a lot about how successful we're going to be down the line, especially like, even for children, right? Like you measure intelligence with a proper intelligence test, like one that is really reliable and valid. You measure that on a kid or a young, like a teenager, and you look 20, 25 years into the future where they are in terms of like job or academic career, whatever, they're going to be higher, they're going to be better. And it's like the predictive power is higher the more complex the job's going to be. But there's more to that than just intelligence, right? If you're an average intelligence person and the IQ is generally rising since like, I don't know, like there's been like solid evidence that for generations IQ was going up. Now I think with the pandemic there was like a real hit for that, and it has to do with like the development of children and how these 2 to 3 years did kind of influence that, because it was like a period of like a big social isolation and like never been there before kind of deal. But yeah, intelligence has been rising, and if you are like averagely intelligent, there's an argument to be made that you could do most jobs, right? That you could do most things. And what makes you really valuable is your interests, your personality traits, different things that make you, right? Like, because sure, you can measure intelligence, but it doesn't matter if somebody's has an IQ of 100 or if somebody has an IQ of 110 or 15, right? That is just still within one standard deviation, which means that yes, one person will be a little bit more intelligent, a little bit more effective than the other person, but that's not something you can't like overcome with effort and different interests and creativity, which is also an aspect of intelligence, but it's not like all there is to intelligence. Obviously, you do have different aspects that are oftentimes not measured in traditional intelligence constructs, such as emotional intelligence. You do have personality traits like conscientiousness, right? Which makes you adhere a little bit more to your sense of duty and like your task adherence, right? So if you have a task at your work or you have a personal project, you will be more dutiful in trying to fulfill that, right? Or you have something like agreeableness, where you do have the ability to seek out cooperation more, right? You are somebody who likes to be maybe a diplomat in a way, right? In a social space. You have extroversion versus introversion. An introvert will be a lot less good at being able to deal with a lot of people, right? And on the flip side, they might be better at other things, right? So there's a lot of things, like a lot of traits that make us that don't have anything to do with intelligence. But then there's people who have the worldview that, okay, if your intelligence, like if your IQ is below 115 or 20, then maybe you shouldn't have children, right? I know, like, there's people that think that way, and then you think, like, and then maybe they have some stereotypes and preconceived notions that they say, okay, like, ethnic group X is on average less intelligent than ethnic group Y, so shouldn't we make a distinction there? And then this is how it starts, right? And this is how discrimination starts. This is how we go into a more, like a less self-determined style, a less open style, a less diverse style of society, because we start disallowing certain people to have access to certain things and to be able to perform certain things and do what they want without even what they would be wanting to do hurting anybody else, right? Like, it's not hurting everybody else if, like, a person who has an average intelligence, right, 100, like an IQ of 100, is getting a child, right? Like, that doesn't hurt anybody. Even, okay, let's make that argument. Even somebody who is sub average intelligence, it is very likely that the child will have a very, like, standard average intelligence, right? There is a deviation from parents to children. I would have to look into the details, but I think, like, it's actually funny because, like, oftentimes people that are relatively, like, very intelligent will have, like, a deviation to the mean, which means if you have very intelligent parents, it is likely that you might be a little bit less intelligent than them. If you have very low intelligence parents, it's very likely that you will be a little bit more intelligent than them. And if you have, like, averagely intelligent parents, it is, I think, I mean, obviously there's giant, like, genetic and environmental factors, but leaving all of them out, it is equally likely that you will be a little bit more or a little bit less intelligent than them. So there's a deviation to the mean, right? Like, and in that sense, the argument might be made that this is, like, the approach somebody who has that worldview, who's like only X, Y, Z should be able to procreate, right? That's not viable oftentimes, but oftentimes this stuff is ideologically driven. So you are in a situation where these people are not, like, where these people are listening to science and reason if it suits their purpose and if it is in line with their worldview. But as soon as it isn't, it's going to be called fake. It's going to be called propaganda. It's going to be called, like, lying. They're like, oh no, there's no evidence for that. Or the people who did that, they were paid to do it, right? Because it doesn't match their worldview. And it is very easy to kind of paint the picture of, like, an enemy. If you disagree with somebody, you're like, these people think differently than us. They are a threat to our existence. Because the world, the nice little world that we have envisioned for us, it isn't possible if those people exist. And so you start kind of just painting an enemy and starting to build tension, right? Extremes always thrive on tension, and that is what I hate, because in the worst times, right? In the worst economic times, in the worst, like, societally unstable times, these kind of ideologies, these kind of groups, they will come out of the woodworks. They will recruit people, very young people oftentimes, or people who are like averagely or aged or older and who are in a crisis, and they will be like, I have a solution for you. Come join us, right? And as you join them, and as you're part of their group, you will learn to maybe be friendly with them and humanize them, and then you are friends, right? And you're like colleagues and associates, and you have like cool conversations and fun parties and activities that you're doing. And then suddenly you realize, right, slowly but steadily, there's this message that's going in that this group and that group and that group, they're a threat to us, right? Because they're opposed to us. And then we start splitting the groups apart, and they're suddenly becoming the enemy because they're kind of the antithesis to us. So yeah, I mean, there's so much going on, right? And this is why this conversation kind of like triggered this impulse to talk about these things in me, because I was like, look, he looked at him and he's like, what? Like, there's this world that this guy envisions, right? In a time where I thought like nothing matters, right? And there's across the border, there's nothing great, right? And I was disillusioned. I was kind of disheartened. I didn't know where to go, right? I was directionless. And this guy came to me and he was like, can I interest you in my worldview? Can I indoctrinate you into my philosophy and ideology? And then that's when his light started to shine again, his enthusiasm, his motivation. He's like burning for a cause. It was the same with Roberto, wasn't it? Johan and Roberto. And Roberto's like, before that, I was kind of distraught and whatever. But then Johan came into my life and I was like, this is somebody I would die for. Right? Think about that. Like that's a thing where you're like, I mean, even me, who is like a very neutral person, who's generally trying to assess things on a very rational basis, I find myself sometimes swayed by things like experiencing hate and discrimination and bad things happening in the world, people making bad faith arguments, people reveling in the suffering of other people. And tell me that this does not alienate you from this certain group of people that's engaging in that, and that you're not like pushing them away and dehumanizing them, and then you're seeing them as the enemy, and you start getting frustrated and aggressive because you feel like you're not getting through to them, because you feel like there's no talking to these people, right? Like these people, right? Even that is kind of a dehumanization, right? Like just pushing them all into that group and being like, this is the enemy, right? There's no communication possible, even though we speak the same language. And then you start to get these thoughts, right? Like, and that goes, like I said, that goes for both extremes, but it goes more for the extreme on the discriminatory side, right? On the side that is like, well, there should only be one group of people, or like X group of people, right? Because these people are kind of seeing themselves as, we're exclusive, we're better than you, right? Like, or like, you are a threat to us. While the other side's kind of on the defensive, and obviously it will cause like a counter movement that is going way too much into the extreme because of like the force that is coming from this side, right? And then you have both sides being on all the ends of the spectrum and hating one another. And if you're like in the middle, you don't belong to them, you don't belong to them, you're the enemy to both of them if like things get polarized enough. So you have to decide where you go, or you stand in the middle and get shot, basically, despite not being part of either side, right? Like, and that is the sad thing. So many innocent people who just want to live their lives, who care for their neighbors, right? Who care for their friends and family and whatnot, who just want to do good in life as well, right? Like within their limited like community and like the place they live in, get caught in the crossfire. You see that here, right? Like with the urban development and whatever, right? And this guy's pulling the strings, and suddenly people are being displaced, basically. Yeah, I mean, those people didn't do anything, right? I'm sure there's like some religious fanatics and extremists on the other side who are like doing shady shit and whatever. But those people didn't do anything. And they're in the crosshairs of this, right? They're the ones dying most of the time because either side is just using them as human shields, right? Or hating on them because they don't adhere to their like ideology enough. So it's like, it's very sad. It's very sad. But obviously, this is how society works to a degree. But understanding that, right? Understanding when like subliminal messaging and populism and all of these things are coming your way, right? And trying to exploit the troubles and problems you have. That is very important. It's very important to see that and be like, okay, you know what? I might agree with point XYZ, but let me just take a step back and be like, maybe this is not the solution. Maybe violence and like force and oppression and all of these things, they are not the solution, right? But holy shit, I talked like 25 minutes. Sorry. Probably some of you just skipped this, but yeah, let's continue.
俺の銃を返してくれ。ほら、あんたの銃返すよ。
ダメだミランさん、あなたはそんなことをしちゃいけない。
止めても無駄だ。俺はあいつを殺す。
あなたには今一緒に暮らしている家族が。
その家族の肉親を殺したのはあいつだ。俺があの男をこの国に連れてきたから。
Like I said, he feels responsible.
俺の息子も。
And he has that personal, emotional investment.
この町の焼き討ち事件の時、未だにトルコ人たちの間で語り草になっている人物がいる。必死に怪我人の手当てをし、懸命に火を消し止めようとした日本人がいた。
So he knew about him.
ドクター・テンマ。
Or suspected.
信じる。あんたのやろうとしてることがよくわかる。あんたと俺は同じだ。
It's funny how this is a look in the mirror for him, right? I do wonder what conclusions he draws from that look into the mirror.
これを逃すと二度とチャンスはないかもしれない。
ミランさん。
Because that's the thing. The way to get through to Tenma is to actually make him care about other people's issues and make him reflect back on himself through that, because he's very not very self-observing, but instead like all of his focus and attention is on making sure other people are alright. Which is a strength in some areas, but a weakness in others. Is he gonna get stopped here? Yeah, I think he got put down. Rip my boy. He needed to, because we have to have him as an example while Tenma maybe succeeds.
いえ、もうすぐミンさんの分もできますから。
ミラ遅いわね。もうすぐ帰ると思うんだけど。
出来たてを食べてもらった方がいいので、ミランさんの分は後にしますから。
そう？じゃあお願いね。
Yeah, here it comes. Shot him.
その他の被害者はありませんが、各界からの要人も数多く出席しており、場内は一時騒然となりました。なお、犯人の身元、犯行目的などは未だ判明しておりません。ではここで偶然撮影された事件の瞬間の映像をご覧。
みんな美味しい美味しいって大好評よ。ミランも早く帰ってくればいいのに。
撮影された事件の
Very sad. Oh, yes, he is actually there, yeah. Nina remembers him.
彼に隠し事をしちゃダメだよ。
Oh shit. Rip, he was a real one. I don't know how you fight that, right? Because like the people who, oftentimes the people who are responsible for these organizations, they don't shriek back from, I don't know, hoarding weapons, right? Arming up illegally. Getting powerful allies, right? Playing dirty. They think that they can criticize corruption and all of this stuff on the opposite side, but they justify their own corruption and their own illegitimate doings by saying they fight for the freedom of their own people or their country. And it kind of, like, that's a duplicity that oftentimes it's accepted by them. They know they're being duplicit. Oh yeah, preview. Ooh. Suk, right? Are they really unrelated murders though? Isn't that the dude that they interrogated? Curious. Very curious. Right, let's wind it back. We are going to mute, and no, we're not hiding the subtitles. Yeah, I don't know how much I'm gonna talk because I already talked a lot. But yeah, let's go through this. I do love like these window shots that we have in a lot of the episodes. I do like some of the director's personal style. It's very classic, but it's also very effective to show intent, right? Like the constant self-observation or the separation of different parties from one another through windows, through surfaces, whatever. It kind of symbolizes a lot how certain relations are in the show. Yeah. And we have like the shaky angle and whatnot, and he's running away because obviously this guy knew he was being observed by Tenma. I think so, because like, sure, the police could have just randomly noticed him as well. But like, I think the guy knew he was gonna be observed by Tenma, and then he just called the popo on him. And here we have a doctor who cares about people, much like Tenma. Cares so much about them that he's willing to do these things for them, although Tenma points out rightfully so that sometimes doing justice by somebody is not necessarily the best thing for them looking towards the future, right? So if this doctor had not done this and been shot, if he was still there and could take care of all of them, he could, with his salary and with like maybe his connections, could be able to find a good life for them, right? But obviously I do understand this idea of there is this dude. I know he has a lot of influence and power. He's gathering people. He had people assassinated, right? This is organized crime in a way, right? But it's like almost legitimized in a way. Especially if certain parties come to power, it's gonna be legitimized and gonna just be forgiven. And that's the belief, right? We built a country, we built a world in which our crimes will be accepted as necessary to bring about a better world and be deemed outside of jurisdiction because we did it for the right reason, right? The means to an end. This is the plan, right? My crimes will not be punished because I'm doing the right thing in my mind, right? In my belief. And he's seeing the damage that's being done. People displaced, people killed, right? When they're showing resistance, even if it's just social resistance, even if it's just going to demonstrations, right? Groups forming who are attacking people in the street, right? In the evening when nobody's here, right? Like you find somebody isolated, you intimidate them. And nobody's willing to help, either because they're afraid themselves or because they're in a big crowd and they think somebody else could help, right? That's a real psychological effect. So if you're ever in a difficult situation where you are in public, speak to people directly. Like, speak to them. Don't be like, somebody help me. Be like, hey, can you help me, please? Right? Because this is how you activate them. Most of these people are not bad people. They're just afraid, and there's like this diffusion of responsibility when you are in a public space. So what you need is involve people directly, people who you think are gonna be on your side, right? Obviously not appealing to the people who wanted to do you any harm. That's not gonna I mean, sometimes it might help, actually, but most of the time it won't, because like the intent is there, right? And the philosophy, the ideology is so deep that you can't snap them out of it in a moment, right? It needs months or years to actually show them that what they're doing is destructive. And then all it takes oftentimes, we've seen a lot of great shows that simplify that. Netflix series Dark, for example, one of the best shows ever created, in my opinion, like best TV shows ever created, has a couple of examples where it's like, I have my doubts, I start doubting certain things, right? And then somebody who had some influence on me comes to me and is like, look, it's all right, you strayed from your path, it's fine, what you were doing is right? And all it takes is that to actually bring you back into the fold, which is, and it's harder to learn new things and to override previous information with new information than to learn something from the ground up, right? Or to snap back to things you did before. You probably realize that oftentimes when you are going to meet people that you haven't seen in a while, right? People from school, university, whatever, right? Like that you haven't seen in years, and you're like starting to kind of behave more like your old self rather than the person you are today. So that's a very interesting effect that also exists. Parent and child. That's morbid, by the way. Calling like chicken and egg parent and child. In a way it's also weird though, right? You're like, that's how it is, right? You're eating an animal and you're eating the embryo of an animal, basically. Now, I'm not a vegan, right? But I do understand why a lot of people do go to become vegetarians or vegans. Because obviously there is some morality to that, and the question is also, how did those animals live, right? So if they lived a long good life, right? Not like boxed into like confined spaces or whatever, you can make an argument for that they wouldn't exist without the consumption of milk, flesh, whatever. You can make an argument for that and can be like, yeah, they had a good life, right? They existed because we used them as cattle for resources, whatever. Obviously, some people might find that offensive. They might find that not okay. They might not be able to be able to justify that with their own morality, and that's okay. That's absolutely fine, I think. Right, that is 100% understandable, to have empathy for this animal and be like, no, I don't want them to be killed for food, especially if there's plenty of other food resources that we could be using. But at the same time, I do think like there is a gradient, right? And today, obviously, global supply chains, mass meat production, basically, right? It is very inhumane. Chapek. Yeah. It's very interesting to always involve children in all of this, because they have a very naive and innocent perspective. I do feel like children often put things into perspective because they are, out of all of the groups that you could be observing, they are the ones who are the most at the mercy of social circumstance, right? So if a child belongs to a minority group, right, like if an adult belongs to a minority group that is being discriminated against, there's a lot of like supposed arguments, not real arguments, but supposed arguments to be like, no, this is like, it's just how it is, or like for example, I don't know, adults, whatever, that are of XYZ are more often criminals or whatever, right? And obviously there's systemic issues that are responsible for that, right? Like that's the problem with AI as well a little bit, because like AI, big data often uses like learning models. They often use as data sets to learn on. They often use historical data, and historical data is biased in the way that our history is biased. So if I don't know, if you use a set of historical data from before apartheid in South Africa, or before like before the Civil War in the US, you would teach the AI data that is inherently racist, right? So basically, computers are not perfect, right? They don't account for bias, and they often confuse, that's also an interesting fact, they often, or they can't make a clear distinction between correlation and causality. Which leads to the fact that if you feed an AI with historical data, and all data is kind of historical data, right? Because it's data that happened in the past, it is the algorithm that the AI develops will be perpetuating the status quo. There can't be change, right? Unless you tell them, I want things to change in that way, right? Like, I want things to be less, right? Unless you partial out biases that existed in the past, the AI will just always spew out the biases that existed. So that is very interesting, because if we look at children, they are at the mercy of this, right? You can make, to come back to that, you can make arguments about, yeah, I don't know, adults of group XYZ are more often, like, on average, more criminal, right? And there's systemic issues for that, like I said. But for children, you can't always make that argument, because you're like, look, these are people who have no power, right? They have less capabilities than adults. They're not fully developed. They exist at the mercy of adults. They exist at the mercy of the system, right? All of these things. Children, like, at least if you are not of the belief that some philosophers in the or like researchers in the past, or educators in the past, where you believe that humans are inherently evil, because obviously that is one stream of thought that existed, right? There was this distinction between people who believed humans are inherently evil and you have to discipline the evil out of them for them to become civilized. You have people who thought that humans are an absolutely neutral blank page, and give me any child and I can make anything out of it by how I like influence it, which is also not entirely true. And there's people who believe that humans are completely good, and in order to make them not evil, you need to take the influences of society away from them, because society corrupts them, right? So there's all of these streams of thought when it comes to like education and how to raise children. But if you are of the belief that children are ultimately innocent mostly, and yes, maybe they are somewhat of a blank page aside from basic temperament, right? Genetics, whatever. Some people are more shy, some people are a little bit more like active and like enthusiastic or aggressive and like frustrated easily. But aside from that, they are more or less a blank page. If you believe that they're innocent, that they are at the mercy of adults, which is in my opinion, like a very clear thing, then they provide the perspective of what is happening to people of group XYZ. Because they are the ones that will tell you, well, I know that, what was that, like Turkish people and Asians can't, or Vietnamese people can't travel together. What is that all about, right? What is that all? Right? This distinction, whatever, right? Like, almost like they're lesser than to a degree, right? Like they feel like they're being excluded. They feel like they're being talked or looked down upon. And you feel that shining through a lot through children, right? Like the hopes and dreams and all of that, right? Everything that makes them human and approachable and makes you identify with them and see them as something equal to you, right? And then you see the flip side, which is like, how is their experience of life vastly different from yours, because they experience hate and discrimination and like powerlessness. And they will report that to you. They will show that to you through their behavior, through their attitude, right? The way they act with you, right? And oftentimes you will see that. A meek, like an acceptance of the circumstances because they can't do anything about it, right? And it will kind of explode in different ways, right? As we've seen the doctor report on how whatchamacallhim, Peter Chapek did start educating these kids, and suddenly they started being aggressive with one another, or right, unaliving themselves, or like, right, just forming gangs and whatever. Right? That is an influence, and oftentimes maybe if you feel like you're not well off. Right? As a child, you're like, I don't know, you grow up in a poor household as a child and you feel like life's shit, right? My parents are being put down, I'm just a poor guy, right? I'm worth nothing. And then somebody comes to you and he's like, actually you belong to this group of people who are actually amazing, and all of that amazingness and like that uniqueness, that it's been taken away from you. Right? Like, you are the rightful owner of this world, right? And we want to make, right? And you need to take what is yours, basically. I don't think that's going to influence a child or a teenager when they're growing up. Yes, it is, right? And then they start to think like that because this is the person who gave them hope. This is the person who told them that they are in control of their own life and that they have to take what they want. Right? And in some cases, that can be a good thing when it comes to like therapy and coaching and whatever, right? Treating people that have serious issues, but you can't put that, like, you can't take that, put it into an ideology that is supposed to put other people down, because then you're starting to create aggression, you're starting to create death and pain and suffering. But that's what many people do. They instrumentalize other people's weaknesses. And that's the sad thing. And we see that through children the most. We see that through children the most because they're the most influenceable, right? They're the most manipulatable. They're the most malleable. Yeah. Extremely violent behavior, and his son was one of them, which is, that's rough. That's insane. And he always gets away. That's why I said, like, the weasels, they're always gonna weasel out, right? Lots of people that came from Nazi Germany, they went into all parts of the world that were still colonized or like further away from like the Western world, and they were like, okay, you know what, like, I'm just gonna do my own thing here. And I'm sure they were like sometimes super nice neighbors to everybody around them, or they were psychopaths that secretly murdered people and tortured them. That's also possible, and that also happened. So there's both cases, but in both cases they did some heinous stuff, and then they were like, oh, this would be kind of shit if somebody of like the people who are like don't find that morally right would discover that. Let me just get the fuck out of here and not take responsibility for my actions. And that's a lot of them. And they keep going away, and they keep going away, and they come back like cockroaches. It's... Ooh. Oh, we're getting really political this time. I'm sorry about that. But look at that face. Holy shit. Why is it always like rich old white men trying to run the world, right? It's not even the white, okay, right? It's not even the white part. That is just... That's also part of it. But like rich old fucking... men who have like 20 or 30 years of their life left, and then they think they have to create a new world order, right? Holy shit, dude. Like, I'm young enough, let me decide what I want to do with the world. Shut the fuck up. You don't even know, like, you don't even know what a computer is, okay? Hello? Not true, but you know, you get the feeling, right? You get what I mean. Yeah, like I said, like the great lighting choices, by the way, right? The way he's threatening here and his intentions and all of that, the gun in his face. But this is not like a threatening situation of I'm gonna shoot you. He's just like, Tenma knows he's not gonna shoot him, but he also knows that he has a gun, so he's gonna go for it. So either Tenma can be like, okay, I'll give you your gun that you trained with and make it less likely that you get shot and more likely to succeed, which is in Tenma's interest, but obviously still not what Tenma wants, because Tenma is like, look, think of the people that will miss you. I think the mistake that Tenma makes is that Tenma doesn't realize that there are people who will miss him, right? Even if he doesn't spend much time with them. there are people whose life he fundamentally influenced. Right, that young Asian doctor that was helping in that like under like that very poor district, I think in Munich. The countryside doctor who was like marrying that patient, right? Like the old woman basically, right? Who really cares about the people around him, right? A lot of these people. And obviously more closely, Dr. Reichwein and Rudy, who are both on Tenma's side and have history with him and really root for him. And that's our lawyer who at some point gotten into this. I mean, I don't think Lunge cares about him, but Lunge would feel maybe a little bit guilty that he suspected him originally when Tenma would be arrested and died and whatever, and by shooting Johann or whatever. And especially Dieter, of course, who's Tenma saved, and kind of like Dieter more or less decided to adopt Tenma as his de facto parent, including Nina, who also was saved by Tenma, who also has like so much shared history with him at this point, who cares deeply about him and wants to prevent Tenma from actually going down that road. And even Ava, right? Like Ava, who has come a long way and has come around to the point where she's like, I don't want Tenma to actually sacrifice himself and his life for that. He's too good for that. I do think that she believes that. And this is why she's going for that, because she's obviously also involved in this privately and has had so much like guilt for like, telling authorities that he's responsible and all of that stuff. So yeah, it is insane. Our two innocent children dreaming of a better life, right? Go separate ways and at some point in time meet again because of their past connections. They feel that connection. They're like connected to one another, but in the meantime, like decades have passed and so much has changed. They developed in such different ways. And even though they feel that connection and they think one another to still be the same person as before, that's not always the case. And then we get into a situation like that. And he's keeping himself very close to the chest, right? He's like giving hints and stuff, but he's not saying too much. And this is how people like him operate. They're like feeling it out and see if people are responsive to this kind of thing and what kind of person they are. And then if they feel like they can convince them of their side, they can be like, don't you want to join us, right? And if they don't, they just keep it friendly and that's that, right? And later on you find out they were actually, I don't know, murdering people in their basement and you're like, holy shit, what the fuck? Not this guy, right? I know him. But that's the thing, you don't. He's a little bit naive, he's a little bit young still. And a difference in their attitude, the way he's always looking down, kind of just trying to keep control, basically. Close-chested, not giving off a hint of what... Just a hint, right? He's like, you might consider it terrifying. Just to kind of... Like, that's oftentimes like that false humbleness where it's like, yeah, you might consider it weird, right? If you bring up an idea where you know the other person is not gonna be happy about it, you're like, maybe that sounds a little bit weird, but hear me out, right? Trust me, bro. Yeah. And this is what we had here, right? Like them looking into each other's eyes here. The mirror. Tenma sees the mirror of himself. And I do wonder what he takes away from that. If he takes anything away from that. If anything changes about that. Yeah, obviously, public space, security, whatever. There wasn't a high chance to begin with. I wonder if Tenma is crying here. That's what I was asking myself. Because, like, I don't know, he might have shed too many tears to actually be crying at this point, even if he still feels the pain on the inside. At some point in time, our tears dry up. I've made that observation. I was like a person who, as as a kid, as a teenager, was very close to like in Germany there's a saying, it's like he spilled very close to the water, which basically means it's very easy to make him cry, basically. Like, I cried a lot, I think. And it was an expression of sadness and suffering for me. But with time, like, at some point I know it was like, it's been 10 years since I cried. Holy shit. I think like last time I cried was actually not too long ago. The funeral of my grandfather. It's like, I didn't cry for most of it. And it very much felt like the funeral of my grandmother, when my grandmother died, where it's like, yeah, it's kind of something that I knew would happen eventually, and I've kind of made my peace with that, even if I'm sad. But interestingly enough, there's something that happened here, which was like, my brother held a speech, and it was very, very impressive to me, because it brought up all of these points that made my grandpa what he was, right? Even like the points where you don't agree with him, where it's like stubborn old man, whatever, right? Like just, and right, and he brought all of these things up that made him unique, that made him like a person where it's like you're not angry at him because he's not doing anything bad. It's like a lot of just like stubborn old people behavior, or like behavior that's unique to him, and you're just shaking your head when he does that stuff, right? Or sometimes it's funny, right? It's like, I wouldn't have said that, I wouldn't have done that, and it's not anything offensive, by the way, right? Like, I'm just talking about like the attitude he had, basically, and like unique like idiosyncrasies of like sayings that he would put out there, right? And stuff like that, that he himself like coined basically within the family. And it's like, that's typical him, right? And it brought forth so much, like such vivid memories for me. And also I looked at my brother and was like, in a way, my brother had a much closer, or felt like to me, had a much closer connection to him like than I did. And there was so much like pain in there, and so much like just emotional connection, and that's a way to get to me too, right? Much like with Tenma, like empathy. And in a way, I kind of vicariously like went through these emotions through the help of my brother's emotions, which was an interesting moment for me, but also like a moment where the dam broke, basically, and where I cried for the first time in a long time. I do wonder if he cried here or not, because we don't see his face. And Nina recognizes him from the Red Rose Mansion. Alright, boys, that was episode 62 of Monster. I don't know if I'm actually gonna do 63 to this week. It's already a pretty long episode, but well, I'll see you in a bit if I do. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It would be really cool if you do that. I don't say that often enough, and I'm always happy about people who join the fray. Basically, we got a decent amount of series that are in the backlog. We got more coming. I don't know what yet, but we'll see. Right, we'll see. At this point in time, when this releases, maybe Girls Last Tour is already on YouTube. It's already on Patreon at this point in time, as you can maybe see. And if you're a patron, you'll see that as well. And I thought that, like, because I had a little bit of issues with Girls Last Tour and actually getting it onto YouTube, and it's probably gonna take a while, I'm probably gonna queue up some of them and just let them get through the system and then release them at some point in time. And in the meantime, I'm probably gonna react to something else in tandem to that, which is maybe gonna be Vinland or Land of the Lustrous or something else. We'll see. Maybe we'll find something interesting, right? A movie or two that we can tackle, or yeah. I mean, we'll have to see what's in the cards for that. But do check out all of the content. I do hopefully continue Disco Elysium soon, and I want to stream every once in a while, like every week or every 2 weeks on the weekend or something. Kind of establish that a little bit to Dark Souls Remastered. I'm on that right now on Patreon, and I want to finish up Spice and Wolf as well soonish. That's one of the plans, and I definitely also I had Outer Wilds planned for possibly a streaming game that could be really cool. But if you have anything cool and psychological, I've played Slay the Princess, mind you, so Stanley Parable, I've played that one as well, so I can't dive into those. But if you have any cool games that I could put myself into, and we can analyze that on a psychological level, shorter game kind of deal, then do let me know. That would be really amazing. I'm always looking forward to stuff like that. So until then, I hope you'll have a good one, and I'll see you either in just a second or next week for a fresh set of episodes.